Today marks 20 years since Brian Shaffer disappeared in Columbus, Ohio on April 1st of 2006. I know I've covered Brian's case before and that it's very well known across the country, but being familiar with the area that Brian disappeared from, it has always sat really heavily on my heart, and his friends and family have been waiting for answers for 20 years now. So I think it's important to keep rehashing these details because I truly believe that someone out there knows something. So it's time to talk true crime, and this is the disappearance of Brian Shaffer. It was Friday, March 31st of 2006, and Brian had just finished up his classes, marking the start of spring break for him and other Ohio State students. So him and his dad would go to the Outback Steakhouse in Reynoldsburg, Ohio, and then he had plans to go out with his friend and former roommate, William or Clint Florence. Brian grew up in Pickerington, Ohio, which is somewhat close to Ohio State's campus, where he went for his undergraduate degree in microbiology, and at the time of his disappearance, he was in his second year of medical school at Ohio State as well, so he was very familiar with this area. Apparently, Brian did express to his dad at dinner that he was exhausted. He had just crammed for all of his medical school exams, but he was out for spring break now and was supposed to actually go on vacation with his girlfriend Alexis to Miami. Around 10 p.m. on March 31st, Brian and his friend William or Clint Florence would set out for the bars starting at Ugly Tuna Saloona. He also called his girlfriend Alexis around 10 p.m. They had a conversation. He said, "See you soon, love you," and that was that. She was out of town with some family, and they were again planned to go on vacation then. So they set out for the bars, and their night had begun. Brian and Clint had a couple of drinks at Ugly Tuna and then decided to bar hop around Columbus, including places like Brothers Bar and Grill and Short North Tavern, which were not far from Ugly Tuna's original location. And at some point in the night, they met up with another friend named Meredith Reed, and the three were seen going back into Ugly Tuna Saloona around 1:15 a.m. Something I want to point out that's been a misconception I've seen in other people covering this case is that the original Ugly Tuna was in the Gateway area of Columbus, Ohio, south of campus on High Street. There is now a new Ugly Tuna Saloona that is off of Chittenden Avenue. They are not the same, and Brian disappeared from the original Ugly Tuna Saloona. Brian, Clint, and Meredith are seen entering the bar together on surveillance footage near the escalators, but at some point in the evening, Brian separated from the other two because apparently he wanted to go and watch the band. And Brian did have a love for music. He had this dream of starting a band if he wasn't going to medical school, so this did add up. Around 1:55 a.m., Brian is seen on surveillance footage outside of the bar. He talks to two women, and then he re-enters the bar, and this is the last time that Brian would ever be seen. And I would like to say that these two women were interviewed extensively, and they are not believed to have any involvement in this case. It's now around 2 a.m. on April 1st of 2006, and the bar is about to close, so Clint and Meredith are ready to head home and start looking around for Brian and Ugly Tuna, but they can't find him anywhere. Reportedly, they tried calling him with no response, so they assumed that he had just gone home. And Brian had a single apartment on King Avenue, which I would say is walkable distance from where the original Ugly Tuna was. So Clint and Meredith are seen leaving the bar on surveillance footage, but Brian was never seen leaving. Later in the morning on April 1st, Alexis, Brian's then girlfriend, keeps trying to call Brian, but she's not getting any response, which is very worrisome. So friends and family are searching everywhere for Brian, but they're not able to locate him, aren't getting any kind of response. Alexis goes to the airport for their scheduled trip, hoping that Brian will show up to the airport as well, and he doesn't. So the family then files a missing persons report. The search for Brian was immediately on, and investigators went to Ugly Tuna. They interviewed all of the employees. They were looking at security footage. They brought in cadaver dogs that picked up nothing, and they said they looked in every part of the premises that a body could have fit in, and they just picked up absolutely nothing. There were numerous different exit routes that Brian could have taken from Ugly Tuna, and these were all looked into as well. Ugly Tuna's original location was almost in a strip of different restaurants and businesses, and there was an active construction site behind, and not all of those businesses, I guess, had surveillance footage at the time, but somehow they determined that he did not go through any of them. The construction site is the basis for a lot of theories surrounding this case, that maybe Brian got injured or he got buried there somehow. But the lead investigator at the time said that they searched extensively through this construction site, which at this point was a big pile of dirt. It hadn't really amounted to anything. They brought cadaver dogs out, and nothing came of this either. Additionally, the original Ugly Tuna was situated on High Street in Columbus, which is where the hustle and bustle of Columbus is. It's all the restaurants, shopping, nightlife. So there was extensive security camera footage, even back in 2006, of the surrounding areas, let alone the Gateway area. And he turned up on none. The lead investigator said they searched through hours and hours of footage, and there was no sightings of Brian anywhere near the area. They even searched the Olentangy River, which is situated on or near Ohio State's campus and downtown Columbus, but I wouldn't say it's really in walking distance of where the original Ugly Tuna was, especially after drinking, and nothing really came of this either. No security camera footage near the area, anything. They did go into Brian's apartment on King Ave, but there was nothing out of the ordinary. There was no signs of foul play, any kind of struggle, nothing of the sorts. Despite all of this, authorities do believe that Brian left Ugly Tuna that night, and maybe he took an exit that wasn't completely covered by surveillance footage because some of the security cameras had dead spots, didn't get 100% of the area, and they say it is completely possible that he did leave. I read an interview today that the authorities did, and they said they have three possible options essentially. One, that Brian passed inside of the bar, which they do not believe happened. Two, that Brian left through the construction exit and that foul play occurred somehow, or he got in a car and an accident happened. And three is that he up and left. He walked away and started a new life. There was also an instance where Alexis tried to call Brian and his phone rang multiple times, which typically doesn't happen if your phone is disconnected or dead, and it pinged a cell phone tower in Hilliard, Ohio, which is about 14 to 15 miles outside of Columbus, but the authorities said this was likely a glitch. And authorities said that they interviewed over 100 people, anyone they could identify that was at the bar, near the bar, that worked at the bar that night. And they also did polygraph tests on his brother, his father, Meredith Reed, and the only person that did not agree to a polygraph test was apparently William or Clint Florence, the man that he started out the night with, that he spent the night with, which why would you not do a polygraph test? That has always rubbed me the wrong way. Authorities said that they believe foul play was likely involved at this point and that they've had persons of interest, but never an official suspect. There have been unconfirmed sightings of Brian in numerous locations, but obviously none of these have ever been confirmed. A Columbus-based podcast, True Crime Garage, actually did a six-part series on this case, and they received a tip with a name, and they reported it to the Columbus Police Department, and the name apparently sparked some interest because they had been on the Columbus Police Department's radar since 2006. Apparently, this person's name had also been brought up regarding Brian's case in 2020. So authorities decided they were going to go to the house that this person lived in 2006 when Brian disappeared, and they noticed that a portion of the concrete in the basement looked different than the rest of the concrete. The authorities got a warrant to dig this area up, and when they did, apparently all they found was a quote unquote old fuel oil tank that had been capped off. Someone close to the case reported the same name and information that the True Crime Garage team did, and obviously they dug up the basement and got a warrant for this, so they had to have some kind of reasonable cause. The authorities haven't really released anything surrounding this person, and obviously there haven't been any arrests made, no names, anything of the sorts. But they did say Brian knew this person and they would hang out on occasion, and that this home was close to the original Ugly Tuna location. There are so many theories surrounding this case, specifically surrounding that Brian may have just wanted to start a new life and left voluntarily. His mom had passed away the month before. He didn't really want to be a medical student, but he had his father and his brother here who were also grieving over his mother. He had his girlfriend. He had a planned trip. He said, "See you soon." His apartment was completely still there. It just doesn't add up, in my opinion. Brian's father would also unfortunately pass away in 2008 without ever getting answers as to what happened to his son. But his brother and friends are still out there waiting, and I truly believe that someone somewhere knows what happened that night. And I hope covering cases like these somehow leads to an answer.